Well, hello everyone. I'm here with Grace today. I'm so excited to have her here. Me and Grace met very briefly at like a networking event, but I immediately was like, this woman, I need to know more about her and her story because you mentioned how you also healed from an eating disorder. And I was just
Mhm.
like, wait, what? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so like as like a little bit of backdrop to this, I just love the timing of this, Grace, because my work is sort of nervous system adjacent. I wasn't fully trained in it. I know a little bit about it, but it's my training is mostly based on like positive psychology, behavioral change psychology, and some of the lifestyle, nutrition, and deeper spiritual and like soul questions. But
Mm,
recently, I have felt so drawn to just like really learning more about the nervous system because I've had a personal experience of releasing what I can only describe as very deep trauma in the autonomic nervous system. And
mm,
now that that's like leaving, coming out of a deep functional freeze that I've been in for a long time,
mm,
I just experienced like everything is different. Like I've never experienced this level of just how it impacts absolutely everything. So I was like, man,
wow.
I got to learn more about the nervous system. So I've actually like, I'm diving into more study in that area. So I just think the timing of this is perfect because that's all you do. And you're like 10 years ahead. So I'm just, yeah, perfect timing. And
Mm,
I would love if you are comfortable to start with your story because it's an incredible one, right? Like, I mean,
mm.
I was scrolling like basically obsessed with your Instagram account, just like reading everything. And
Yeah.
and your story is like, oh my goodness, like you have been through some stuff. And so I would love for you to share that. And yeah, I mean, you dealt with an eating disorder too. That's something we have in common. And
Mhm.
again, going back to this nervous system piece, I'm realizing that it's actually like they might look like different manifestations, but they're like maybe the same root. So please grab the mic and take as long as you need. I just,
Mm.
yeah, go for it.
Amazing, because it can be long. It can be short, it can be long. So, and also what you just said at the end,
Mhm,
yes,
mhm.
100%. I actually just created, was it yesterday? I think a post that literally said that, like all of these different things, people might think that what I do is too good to be true or a scam kind of thing because I'm like, I can treat all these things, all
Yeah.
these different conditions, eating disorder, chronic illness, chronic pain, whatever, because it has the same root. So exactly, yeah, I love that you said that. Which there's nuance in all of it. I have to say that, right? I'm not just saying
Mhm.
this all or nothing like, oh, we
Yeah.
can heal everything, right? There's
Yeah.
nuance for sure. So yeah, anyway, I'm Grace. Hi for everyone here. I'm a licensed therapist and nervous system coach. And okay, so let's dive right in. So the two big, I guess you could say, conditions or healing points in my journey are eating disorder and chronic pain and illness. Now, I used to think they were pretty separate. They're totally not. They 100% overlap. And that's kind of my specialty is meeting that overlap within people. But I'm that person that I can track back to like childhood having weird illnesses, weird things that pop up or going to the doctor and they're like, oh no, she's fine, but I wasn't feeling well. Just so many different things, pain. I was a highly, highly anxious child. Like I look back and I'm like, oh, she was so scared all the time. Like I was so
Mhm.
anxious, fearful of literally everything. And I'm one of those people that are like, I just came out of the womb that way. So
Mhm.
anxious. Um, Now I know that that's really underlying eating disorder,
Yeah.
pain, depression, illness, all the things.
Yeah.
Fear and anxiety underlines all of that, which creates stuck nervous system dysregulation.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so I didn't, obviously, as a kid, you don't understand that. But thankfully, I was actually put in therapy as a teenager. I had gone through some really deep depression, suicidal depression. I was sexually abused. And so I'm very, very grateful that my parents put me in therapy. It 100% saved my life from suicidal depression. And so from then, that's when I was like maybe 16, I decided, oh, I want to be a therapist. Like I want to help girls. My plan was to be a teen girl therapist.
Mhm.
That didn't pan out in just many different reasons and ways, but yeah, I wanted to do what she did and help me.
Mhm.
Um, Fun little fact, I'm going back to where I'm from in Dallas. She's having a retirement party. I'm going back to celebrate her.
Yay.
Wonderful. Full circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was the start of me recognizing there's mental health, right? There's me helping myself and helping others, having values and boundaries. And what I thought at the time was me learning how to regulate my emotions. But as you'll see, that's really not the case. I didn't fully understand that at the time.
Mm.
Um, I still kind of like developed or went through different periods of depression throughout college. But I knew I wanted to be a therapist, so I had to go straight into grad school. And grad school was when I had the first, like towards the end of college, beginning of grad school was when I had like, it was like shit hit the fan. It was
Mm,
like I was a new adult. I was in a stressed out grad program. My eating disorder had become like leading my life. It was the worst I had been. It had peaked in
mm,
grad school. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know I had one. Was total in denial.
mhm,
I also had debilitating chronic pain to where, I mean, I would cry myself to sleep at night because I was in so much pain. And
mm,
there wasn't really much wrong with me. Like there are things that I could go and be explained because I'm hypermobile in my joints. If you know what that means, it's
mhm,
literally hypermobility in your joints. So people would explain to me that's just it, right? But the level of pain I had did not equate to what was explained,
mm,
like bulged discs or, off hips or I would injure myself more easily. It just, the level of pain did not equate to that. So I was in the middle of grad school trying to be a therapist, raging eating disorder, and high chronic pain. And finally, I was going to see everyone underneath the sun, right? Like all the different naturopaths and everything, which, by the way, I love functional medicine. And also, it made my eating disorder worse. It
wow.
was, s- this is the thing that I talk about the most because, yes, the foods we eat impact our bodies, right? They
Mhm,
matter. But I see this time and time again when someone's searching for a health treatment, they're searching for answers and they're put on certain diets, clean
mhm,
diets, healthy diets, all the things.
yeah.
And then they end up developing an eating disorder. And to be honest, that was kind of me. I kind of developed a like clean eating type eating disorder, and then it just went
Yes.
downhill from there into everything. And so that's what I'm really passionate about talking about is that nothing that creates rigidity within your body, your mind, your health is actually going to help you. The more stressed you are about actually what you're eating, right? Instead of embodying and eating what feels right, it's going
Mhm,
to create more stress than the actual food. And I was that picturesque
yeah.
person at that
Yeah.
time. And my friends saw it too. My friends tried to confront me about it, all the things. And I was like, you just don't care about your body like I do, kind of a
Yeah.
thing. Oh, and so, yeah, I went on a tangent there. My point being is I was very much so that person, like clean eating, perfect health, like doing everything right, really, really trying to do everything right to help myself. And nothing, it wasn't working. I was still miserable with my body. I was still in so much pain. I was eating quote unquote perfectly until it ended up being like a binge restrict type
Yes.
of
Yeah.
disorder.
Mhm,
Um, and then finally, back to the naturopath. I was seeing this naturopath who was really sweet in helping me. Finally, he looked at me. He was like, "I think you need to go see this psychologist that I know that specializes in like pain type
mm,
situations." And mind you, I was a therapist in school, right? But we don't talk about this. I didn't learn anything
mm,
about what I do now in school.
mm,
Nothing.
mhm,
To be honest, we didn't even barely touch on eating disorders. We had like half a class on it. Like, there's nothing
mm,
there. Um, and so I was like, sure, I'll do anything. I saw this psychologist. Within about 6 months, she one confronted me about my eating disorder, and two, within 6 months, about 90% of my pain went away.
mm,
So from there, it was great. I was like, okay, cool. The eating disorder was, I was still grappling with it. Like, yeah, someone had confronted me with it, but I wasn't really, really like there wanting to deal with it yet. But a few months later, I finally did. I owned it up and I was like, oh, this is a problem. Okay.
mm,
So I worked with someone, and that was the first huge, I would say, like transformation in my
mm,
life. Understanding why I was focusing so much on food in my body,
mhm,
which I'm not that person where I can say, oh, I have dealt with food problems since I was a kid. I'm not that person. I definitely developed it a little bit later. There are
mm.
mechanisms and
Yeah.
signs that would have led me there,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
how much anxiety I had, how
Yeah.
picky I was as an eater previously.
Mhm,
There's a lot that could lead up to that.
mm,
But within that transformation, I mean, I learned how to respect myself more. I learned some boundaries. I learned that I actually deserve to have opinions, right? And that food is loving and food is not something to be rigid about. I'm so grateful for that. And that was my early 20s. Like I learned that pretty early on. And so I'm
yeah.
really, really grateful for that transformation. I see these 2 points in my life. Like that was a huge one.
Mm,
Um, And so that actually led me into working with eating disorders as a therapist. That was my specialty for a while. I actually worked in eating disorder clinic in Austin, Texas. And then I saw people in private practice, and I still do to this day. I
Mm.
love doing this work. It's the catalyst for so much. It's not just about the food anymore, right? It's not just about your
Hmm.
body. There's
Hmm.
so much more of learning how to come home to yourself,
Yes, yes.
which is also the work I do now with retraining the brain and nervous system out of chronic pain and illness. It's the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, so I will pause there. In terms of that, there's definitely more, but I'll pause there because that was a long thing. So
I love it.
okay.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Like a few things you said, I
Hmm.
jotted down. Firstly, like your experience with, how you experienced the eating disorder flaring up like at its height in university. That was the same for me. Isn't that so interesting?
Uh,
I find like college, university is like seems to be there's something about that period of time, where like we're kind of in transition in our lives and we're not quite solid in one place nor the other. And it's like very destabilizing. And it's funny
mhm,
how that's a time where, these symptoms tend to like reach a peak, because that's like I literally did the exact same thing. And like when you said like the eating disorder took up all of your mental bandwidth, that's exactly
mhm.
how I felt too. Like it
Yeah.
was like there's like so much work to get through at school, but like all I could fixate on was like how many calories did I burn? Like like I can't eat this now and blah 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 blah. And then on the weekend I would binge and then just hate myself where I was like, whoa, like this is I felt exactly the same. And for me it got so bad, like it eventually developed into binging and purging, which was very destructive. But as
Mhm,
I could see, but when I look back on it now, it's like that actually makes sense, like
mhm.
given the environment I was in and how I was responding to it. It's like in a way that was the only time I could feel a little bit of control, right? It,
Exactly.
it's so paradoxical, right? It's like here's this behavior that you are like desperately trying to get rid of. And I was in denial for a long time as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It was
I
all,
know, I'm
or
like,
at least for
oh
me, it was all
no.
under the guise of clean eating, right? Like
Yeah, clean
being
eating is another
healthy.
one too. Yeah, yeah, you can definitely feel like that too, but it ends up just being a different kind of prison. Maybe less destructive than,
Hmm.
actually making yourself purge, but you're
Hmm.
right. Like the root that's driving it feels like the same energy.
Yeah.
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 That's the first thing I picked up. And then when you talked about the yeah, getting into more of like what's really behind the behaviors, I do find like in your second experience working through that and you had your big transformation, it's like it is so linked to self-worth, isn't it? And that's
Yes.
like, and that's and that's something that I want to share with you recently, because you know how like I was telling you that I sort of felt like a deep survival stress trauma really leaving, right? And I
Yeah.
really feel like, oh my gosh, maybe our like preoccupation with changing our bodies or controlling food and all that stuff is actually driven by this really deep survival stress, right? Like you can
Hmm.
say, okay, this is
Hmm.
a self-worth issue, and those are just words, but that actually lives so deep in the system.
Hmm.
And talking about it kind of helps, but to actually have it leave is a different thing. And like, so
Hmm.
that's been like my recent insight. So I'd love for you to speak more to
Hmm.
it because it's like, okay, so there are layers of this, right? Like, and I feel like even a deeper layer has come up now, and that leaving has led me to see everything so differently, and I actually feel like really, really different. It's hard to describe, and you'll probably understand how it feels, right? But it's just this feeling of like, oh my goodness, this is why you can't also like force people to just change behavior because it's not a behavior problem. Right? Like if this
Right.
stress is living deep inside and it's driving you to do these things, you also can't just stop cold turkey because that like creates more
Hmm.
stress. So I'd love for you to speak more to it, because it's like, it's almost like, people always say trust the timing. And it's like, yeah, you kind of do have to trust the timing because you can only heal this as your capacity increases. You can't just force yourself to stop a behavior that actually causes more trauma. Um, so yeah, that's just my kind of personal experience. I would love for you to speak
Hmm.
more to that, just removing that survival stress at the root level, what that journey looks like for your clients, for you.
So you said something at the end there, which is it's key. It's
Mhm.
it's expanding the capacity, right?
Mhm.
So yes, just changing behavior doesn't do much because what's driving the behavior, right? And then what's driving that? There's like usually multiple layers there.
Yeah.
But most of the time, what's driving the behavior is a pattern, a belief system, something
Yeah.
that you've learned very early on.
Yeah.
right? And so what happens is, for example, a belief system that is common, especially within eating disorders, is maybe that you're not enough. You're not
Mm,
enough in other people's eyes. You didn't experience enoughness or acceptance
mhm,
early on. And not to say that, your caregivers didn't mean to do that or anything like that, but
mhm,
that's how you
mhm.
experienced life.
Yes.
So then that it gets imprinted in the nervous system, and the nervous system protects you. It says, okay, well, if that's the case, then we're going to stop you from doing all these things, or we're going to control so that you don't have to feel that anymore. We're going to do these mechanisms by eating a certain way, making your body look a certain way so that
Mhm.
you don't have to feel like you're not enough. Because if we do these things, you're enough. Right. And so just being like, well, obviously, you know this, I'm sure people know, listen to this, know this, like, okay, well, stop doing the eating behaviors and accept your body, everything will be fine. It doesn't obviously work that way.
No.
Um, Underneath all of that is a fear. It's a
Mm,
fear that you're not enough, is a fear
yeah.
that you won't be accepted,
Yeah.
right? And usually that fear is just really strong and hard to be with. We've
Mhm.
never learned how to expand capacity to be
Yeah.
with that fear. So your what we call window of tolerance gets really small for that fear, for that
Yeah.
belief systems, for the emotions you never learned to feel, to be
Mhm.
with. And so symptoms, whether that's eating disorder, pain, illness, depression, anxiety, whatever,
Mm.
are the coping mechanisms for you to not feel that.
Yes.
But working on the nervous system level is expanding your nervous system to expand the capacity to actually be with that fear.
Yes.
And that sometimes is what people recognize as I release something by I actually felt it. I felt that
Yes.
fear
Hmm.
when they've never been able to before. But
Hmm.
you get to a place in your life and your journey and your healing where that becomes okay to do. Not always easy, but it's okay. Okay. And I say do that in quotes because okay doesn't mean it's fine or great or okay, like pleasant. Um, but being more, expanding your capacity, your literal body soma to hold fear, to hold anxiety, to hold whatever those belief systems were,
Yep.
and then to know that that's not truth. That is not your true identity.
Mm-hmm.
That is not your true soul.
Mm-hmm.
That is not your wise self. Those are coping mechanisms. Those are the, in parts work, adaptive
Mm-hmm.
mechanisms that have come into play in your life.
Yes.
So I love that term expanding your capacity because that's what we're
Yeah.
doing. We don't need to release a whole bunch of things to be okay. It's not like we have to get rid of all these things that happened to us in the past. It's just we need to expand our capacity to be with them
Yes.
a little bit more.
Exactly. Like be with it without leaving your body, being like super
Yes.
key, right? Yeah. Because
Yes.
like my
Yes.
next point was like, because when I work with people when it comes to food, it's very
Mhm.
much about releasing the head from this like heavy burden of trying to control, measure, analyze everything, and to
Mhm.
learn how to like live back in your body again and to trust your body's impulses, because you think about, how we lived, say, hundreds of thousands of years ago. We were hunter-gatherers. We didn't have, like we just let
Mhm.
our bodies led the way, right? And when you look at wild animals now, like I live in the mountains and I see deer, foxes, moose everywhere. And
Mhm.
like never do they think like, oh, I ate too many aspen leaves today. It's always just right. They're
Yep.
just led by their bodies and they follow their
Yeah.
biological impulses, and there's no drama, right? And so
Yeah.
like, part of a core part of my work is just helping people to trust their bodies again, right? And it's no easy feat when you've been afraid to live in your body for so long, right? Like because of
Mhm.
trauma, right? Because of programming, conditioning, all these things. Um,
Yeah.
and so, like, one of the things I see is like, I mean, in my own experience, right? It's like trying to control food and how the body looks. They're kind of like attempts to resolve an interior disconnect by working on the surface.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it's like so I would love for you to like share a little bit on like how do you help people like increase the capacity and to kind of trust their bodies again, to have that just that
Mhm.
connection, like forget interoception, just like how do you even like begin to open up to the body sensations again when maybe so much trauma lives there, so you never want to, feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. It starts very simply. One, first, just acknowledging that all those thoughts that are happening around food, around exercise, about how you're planning your day, when your next meal is, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
that those are not coming from, um, those are coping mechanisms, right? We want
Mhm.
to, we want to unattach from those as much as possible.
Yeah.
Just even the psychoeducation around it can be a really grounding
Yes.
sense of
Yes.
like understanding,
Yes.
right? And then start even like one of the best things I do with people is say, okay, I know this can be a little tricky because we're talking about food, but are you that person that when people are trying to figure out where to go to eat, right? Where, like, what restaurant to go to, either you say nothing or you don't go because you don't think you can eat anything there. And we're working on getting out of that. Um, but maybe a lot of people are like, I just don't want to have an opinion, or I don't have an opinion. I don't care. Right. But
Mm,
starting to learn to have opinions, even when you don't know what that is, just try them on. Just try something. Just pick something. Doesn't have to be right. Doesn't have to be wrong. There is no right or wrong. But even just allowing yourself to have a voice gets you a little bit more in tune with your body and your intuitive sense. You may not fully make those connections yet,
yep.
but learning how to pay attention to our desires and our body sensations starts with, like, what opinions might you have too?
Mm,
And then I also say a little nuance to this is that, especially if you've cut your body off for so long,
mhm.
it's going to be complicated. Like, you might think your body's telling you something,
Yep.
and it's really a coping mechanism. Like, oh, you feel fat, right? Or
Yeah.
you feel lazy.
Yep.
Those are not feelings,
No.
right? So we also have to, like, kind of decipher through what you've learned your body is telling you versus
Yeah.
actually what your body's telling you.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that so much. That is actually such a, I never realized that. Yeah, it's like the education piece is important and also
Mhm.
to actually just like pick something. That is, my gosh, I'm so glad you said that because that's true.
Mhm.
I find that like sometimes, like when you're so disembodied, like you just don't trust yourself to do anything, to have any opinions, right? And so like
Mhm.
just by picking something is like,
Yes.
that's a step in the right direction. One of the
Yeah.
things that I guess it's very similar, but like one of the things I tell people to do is to actually just follow your biological impulses. Like if you need to go pee, like go pee now. Don't wait, like
Yes.
don't wait like an hour, right? Because you know how like when you start to pay attention to this, you realize, oh my gosh, if I'm like overriding this impulse for like 3 hours, where else am I overriding, right? My impulses.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy, right? When you do this stuff, you learn so much about how like one of the things a phrase that I'm sure you've heard of is like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And this just keeps being like ding ding ding, like like everywhere you look, it's like how you do one thing really is how you do something else. And yeah, it's all connected. So before we wrap up, Grace, I was just wondering, let's see, I'm just gonna take a quick note of my notes to see if I've missed anything. Oh yeah, there's actually one other thing. I was looking at your Instagram feed, and one of the things that I find you say very often is like, when you feel like your body's in pain, like this isn't your body isn't wrong. Like you haven't done anything wrong. You're not a bad person. Actually, the way that your nervous system is wired, this is actually a perfect feedback, right? And I really love that because that's a common theme in my work too. I'm always telling people that overeating or binge eating, like that's not a problem. Like this is a symptom of something deeper. So just trying to get rid of the symptom is not, it won't give you the relief that you're really after. It won't heal. It won't help you be embodied. It'll just be like managing, like you were saying before, like coping.
Mhm.
So I think that's the last thing that I had that I wanted to ask you about is just like, how do you, yeah, just say more about that. Your body is
Mm.
never wrong. It's always sending a message.
Yeah, yeah. Any symptom, any coping mechanism is, if we could shift everyone's perception from something is wrong to actually this is just a normal pattern that's happening. And it doesn't mean that it needs to stick around. Like, oh, if it's not bad, then why I need to change my binging patterns, right? Like,
Mm,
obviously there are things that are not helpful. But
yeah.
the reason I'm saying it's not bad or it's not your fault is because it's a coping mechanism. It is something that your nervous system learned to use as a protection factor.
Mm,
So just that shift in understanding can help you then relate to yourself differently.
yeah.
And so when you can relate to the symptoms that you've had, that you've dealt with, whether that's binging or restricting or hyperfixating on food or your body,
Yep.
instead of seeing it as like, oh man, I did all these things to hurt myself, I did something wrong. It's, oh man, I was like really my brain, my nervous system, these parts of me were really trying to help me.
Mm,
And when you can shift that understanding, it's like a like an exhale, like, oh, okay. Well, thank you for protecting me. And
yeah.
actually, I don't need those anymore. I'm gonna, move on with this new sense of self that I'm working on, or whatever it is that you're working on. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I see it. Because we don't want to fight. We don't want to fight
Yes. I
what's
love, yes.
happening, right? Like ourselves. If you keep
Yes.
fighting yourselves,
Yep.
there's this internal fight that happens, and then you have more coping mechanisms. So
Yes.
really, so much of relieving eating disorder symptoms is working with the nervous system is relieving that fight, that internal fight that we have.
Mm. I love that so, so much.
Yeah.
I share your sentiment. Like if there is one thing that I wish we could like collectively reframe on, is that exact
Yeah.
thing, is to not see things as wrong and as needing to get rid of. It's more of that activation, like more of that fight energy,
Mhm.
which is probably what's causing this in the first place, right? Like, and you're just
Yep.
adding more to it by like fighting that more. So I love that we have that common ground.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Grace, for coming on and sharing your wisdom. And before we wrap up, would you like to share how people can work with you and the offerings you have? I know you have amazing offerings, so
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and thank you for having me. I love these conversations. They're
yeah.
just the best. Yeah, so you can find me, as she's mentioned, on Heal with Grace Instagram, and I also have a podcast named Heal with Grace. And I have two offerings: one working with myself or the other therapist in my practice, Liana, one to one, and I have a program called the Mind Body Healing Method, which is really a nervous system and brain retraining program for getting out of chronic symptoms. And that's anything from chronic pain to migraines to food sensitivities or intolerances to, I mean, POTS, long COVID, like a million different things you can see on my page.
Yeah, yeah.
But the whole point is rewiring the nervous system and the brain using somatic practices, trauma integration, and emotional regulation. So that is the main, my love, my program. And you can find that all on my Instagram or my podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Grace.
Thanks, Lulu.
Yay.